Welcome to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black lives matter. I'm your host, Lisa Woolford. I'm a fourth-generation sewing enthusiast with more than 20 years of sewing experience. I am looking forward to today's conversation, so sit back, relax, and get ready to get your stitch together. Welcome, everybody, to the Stitch Please podcast. We are back once again with another fantastic episode. I'm your host, Lisa, and I am talking today with Miss Bekah Havens, and she is known on Instagram as the Tipsy Pincushion. And I think maybe her underhandle was something like the sophomore sewist or something, but don't let that fool you. There is nothing sophomoric about what the kind of work that Bekah Havens creates. Also, she has this wonderful email handle, and it's Miss B Haven. And I just thought that was like not her real name. And so when I was going to interview her, I was like, oh, well, what's your real name? Your name really can't be Miss B Haven. And she's like, well, actually, it can, because my name is Bekah Havens. And you will see a bit of her misbehaving in our conversation today because she catfished me. And so we will certainly talk about her catfishing me. But welcome to the program, Bekah. I'm so glad to be able to talk to you in person finally.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It is very, very nice to finally chat.
So one of the reasons that this episode is called Buy All the Machines is because Bekah Havens has so many different types of sewing machines, types and forms that I had not seen. I thought I had a lot of machines. I have a couple of sewing machines. I have a serger. I have an overlock machine. I have a friend that has a blind hemmer, but I don't do that much blind hemming, so I didn't need a designated blind hemmer. Look at her. See, you see her going, ooh, add to the list. This woman has so many amazing machines, and I will talk about that, but I just want to get started at first talking about your sewing background, Bekah. How did you get started in sewing, and why were you calling yourself, or why do you continue to call yourself the sophomore sewist?
I've been sewing only for a couple of years, maybe 3 whole years, I think would be maybe this fall. And I mean, it's a constant learning process, so I always feel like, you know, like a total newbie at each new project. I did sew a little bit when I was little, just literally for like 2 weeks. I had got my hand on my godmother's machine, and it came with some patterns. I think I was like 10, and I was so excited to learn how to sew. You know, we were in a country house, and I thought, like, this is such a country thing to do. Like, I'm going to sew my clothes. And I followed the pattern, and I was so proud of me. And then I realized, like, what I had made was like a vest for a toddler. Like it was so small. Like I was like, I can't fit into my little patchwork vest. And I never sewed again. My great aunt was an incredible seamstress who used to send me little outfits for Halloween and such. And my aunt was a quilter and was never into garments. But so sewing was sort of always around, but I never really dove into it. And I don't know, one day I saw a pattern online and I got super inspired and just wanted to try and thought, darn it, I'm going to pull out my aunt's like very old 1980s hand-me-down machine and give it a try. And I absolutely fell into a sewing rabbit hole that I'm still in. Like, I can't get out.
I think that's an awesome way to describe it, this sewing rabbit hole, because I feel like you are, you know, I mean, I find it really hard to believe that you have only been sewing for 3 years. It doesn't seem like, I mean, I know that there's certain phrases to describe like ambitious beginner, confident beginner, but I feel like even those terms are not suitable for you and the stuff that you create. Well, and so it's just like, I'm just trying to figure out how this is, where the sophomoreness comes in. But I love your idea about describing how you approach every project as a new project. Every project is kind of like a new learning process, which is how it should be for all of us.
So much to learn. I honestly, like, I had this sort of vision, right? So I learned, maybe it's 4 years, but I don't think so. I think it's coming up on 3. And I had this vision that, like, within 4 years, I should have amassed enough skills to feel, very confident. So I started off with like, I'm a freshman sewist, and I'm a sophomore sewist. Like, I was going to proceed to being senior. I sort of treated it like a college experience.
Yeah. Okay.
And for me, jeans was the end. Like, to sew a pair of jeans that to sew a pair of jeans at all seemed insane, but to also have them fit was like this whole other level. That was my pinnacle goal of sewing. I did not expect to hit that this quickly, but you also got to think, like, I've got a lot of free time. Like, I don't have kids. I'm a nurse. I work 12-hour shifts. That gives me 4 whole days to go completely bananas in the sewing room. And it's been like that for like 3 years. Like, it's just my days off are spent sewing nonstop.
And that's it's the way that you describe it. And that makes sense I really like that way that you mapped on your learning onto this kind of 4-year program. It's almost like a 4-year program of self-study.
Yes.
And it's true. And so for me, if you're like at the end of your 3rd year, haven't been keeping like super tight track of it, because it's not like you were like mapping it out like a university curriculum, but you were able to kind of track your progress based on the way that your skills advanced. And so the idea that you've been able to go farther, faster than you imagined seems to suggest that your personal course of sewing study has been really successful. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think of it as a success. I mean, again, there's so much more to learn. But I just felt like a progression of skills. And then for me, graduating to like fabrics that are more difficult, but using the skills you already owned mentally owned, seemed like the way I was going to approach this. So I feel like I put a lot of technical skills under my belt, and they're all still very messy and sometimes they're sloppy, but at least I can sort of recognize the terms and know what they mean. And I'm still sort of in this holding pattern of easier to sew fabrics, which are not necessarily the fabrics that are best for any given garment, right? That to me is my like junior level sewing for me is like, I am now branching out into rayons and things that are just ridiculous. It's like sewing water, and it's much harder.
I remember you when you were I think you were working on a Zadie jumpsuit, and you were putting either the binding on or something. And when you gave that tencel fabric the finger, I fell out laughing. Y'all, I don't know if you have it pinned in your Instagram stories or pinned in your highlights, but oh my gosh, I felt that in my spirit. You were pinning and pinning, and then you got to the end, and it was like 4 inches of extra or 2 inches of extra, and you gave that fabric the finger.
I was so done.
I was like, she was like, that's it. I have had it. I have had it with you.
But it feels so good, though. Tencel is so amazing, but it is just the pits to work with.
It does. It's a recalcitrant fabric. It's a recalcitrant fabric.
It's naughty.
It is naughty. It is non-compliant. It absolutely is all of those things that you're describing. One of the things I love about the way you were describing some of the skills that you've acquired or skills you like to practice is something that I recognize that you and I share in common, and that you seem to have the same love of fussy cutting that I do. I have a deep and abiding, intense love for fussy cutting. I love making sure that my seams are precise. I love making sure that my patterns meet in the way that I want. I just spent, what felt like, I was like, I can't even estimate how much time I spent. I put an invisible zipper in a dress that was made with a bunch of circles. And I wanted to make sure that when I zipped the back of the dress up, both halves of the circles would meet to form a complete circle. I didn't want these weird oblong. And so basically, it's not that hard. You take your circle, you divide it in half, then you add 5/8 seam allowance on the other side, and you cut it that way, and you're done, right? Perfect. Zim, zam, zoom. Done. So I threw the invisible zipper in, didn't baste it, just threw it in, and one half, perfect, right? The other half, I took that thing apart. I was nudging it up, nudging it down, basting, sewing, unsewing. And at one point I was like, do I really care that much?
Do I care? Yeah.
Do I care that much? And it turns out that, heck yeah.
Yes, you do.
That much. I really do care that much. And so I finally got it together, and finally, the dress, the entire dress is like, the skirt is five panels. 3 in the front, 2 in the back, and every single one of those patterns has the dots all going in the same direction, all on the same line. And when you zip it up,
ta-da!
It zips up. I know, right? So that's what I noticed for your. I think this is an IKEA fabric that you're using.
Oh yeah, the orange slices.
The orange slices, which I totally love. And actually, the dress I'm speaking of that I made is also IKEA fabric. It's bed sheets. So I took the sheets. It's a duvet cover with pillowcase. So I could get the bodice out of the pillowcase, and I could get the dress out of one half of the duvet.
Oh, nice.
And so I had that same feeling of satisfaction when you. I think this is one of your posts when you said, I think you marked it not bad because you had those layers so perfect for the big orange slices. And then you got them matched up.
It worked.
And you sewed them perfectly. They matched. And then you put on the skirt. And do you remember what you called it?
My crotch proscenium. Yeah, that's Master Crotch Theater right there.
He called it Master Crotch Theater because the way that the curves of the slices and then the little dots, and when you called it the proscenium, a crotch proscenium, I howled. I fell out laughing.
That fabric, I've been trying to use that fabric for literally 3 years. We don't have an IKEA. A friend of mine went home to her hometown and was inside the IKEA and was taking some pictures and saying that she was like, do you want any of this stuff? And I was like, oh yeah, I get it. Now I couldn't touch it. I didn't realize how large the print was. And it turned out to be this basically canvas, with this enormous pattern on it. And every time I tried to use it, I couldn't. It's not symmetrical. It's every 6 feet. It's a repeat. It was just impossible. I think I used a chunk of it to make a cover for my serger. That's as far as I went with it. And then this skirt pattern came, and I was like, oh goody, I can make this sort of symmetrical on both sides because it buttons up the middle. And then when I cut the pieces, I was like, this looks like a stage with curtains, and it's just opening over my crotch. And I was like, and I've never really made a bold move to try to pattern match before because I find it very difficult. And sometimes you just want to bang out a garment, and I wanted to bang out this garment. And I was like, there's no banging out this garment because this matching situation is crazy. But the pockets were the best feature of the skirt, right? It's the Fiore skirt from Closet Case. And it's just got these neat curved patterns set at an angle. Mm-hmm. And I was like, there's just no way I'm going to be able to do this. And I walked away from that for probably 3 weeks before I got brave enough to cut those pockets. Even cutting them made me nervous. Sewing them on there was a whole other situation. And they're still I am so proud of me on that one because the 2 sides of that skirt may look sort of symmetrical, but it's not. That print, those little orange pips and seeds they are all kinds of wacky. And I was super proud to get that accomplished. I'm not sure the next time I'm going to try that again.
It looks wonderful. And I mean, I really, once again, I'm shocked that you say that this was your first time pattern matching because I've been really, jazzed about pattern matching for, almost my entire sewing career. And what you were doing was almost exactly what I do. And so it's just I just thought you were, you had been doing this a while. And of course you stack it up, you do the pinning, you flip it back, you check it, you cut it, you go. And that's what I thought you'd done. And, which you ultimately obviously did because the results are really good.
It did work. I mean, and sometimes it's just wow, that landed on the first try. And it's you feel like a gymnast with a dismount. You're just woo.
I know, right? 10. It's 10. Throw my hands in the air and wave them like I just don't care. I mean, seriously, I have had those. Well, I did something like that. I don't know what it was. It was something that obviously that I was sewing, and I just kind of zoomed, and I was like, oh, look at that.
Look at that.
That looks perfect and deliberate, and it was neither. I did not intend for this to turn out so well. So it's
accidental perfection is the best kind.
Accidental perfection is the best kind.
Feels Absolutely. So good.
So I want to talk about why I wanted to talk to you about buy all the machines. And one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about this with you is because I think you have a lot of different kinds of machines. And you not only have like home sewing machines like many of us have, you also took the step to go in to do industrial machines. And I remember following you through this journey or this process, your thinking process, as you were, I think was it a year ago or 6 months ago?
Yeah, it was about a year.
About a year ago. And so I remember you were making something with buttonholes and your sewing machine was being a pain in the neck and it was not doing right. And it kept messing up the buttonholes and you were getting upset and frustrated. And I was like, well, I think she just needs to get, a machine that does better buttonholes. Like I got a baby lock. I love mine. I press the button.
Yeah.
I put the button in there. I press the button. It sews the buttonholes. I have yet to have a problem with buttonholes in that machine. And, so buttonholes aren't a problem for me. All I do is put the fabric under there, put a button in it, press the button and go. And so when you took a different approach and you said, I am going to buy a buttonhole machine. And I was like, why on earth? If she says she's a sophomore sewer, she's been sewing, 2 years now?
Yeah, it was a bold move.
And then she's about to get an industrial buttonholer. And I hardly even know what that is. And then it's like, well, I've been sewing 20 years and I ain't got no buttonholer. And, what does she need that for? Is she going to be opening up a buttonhole shop?
It was a rabbit hole. Fell down it.
When you felt, and you were doing this research and then you came up and then, so this was me being petty Patty and being like, I don't know why she get to have one. I ain't got one. La, la, la. And then I was showing some friends, once you finally got it and you finally got it set up, and I watched one of those videos and I showed some sewing friends. We watched that thing and y'all.
It's inspiring.
When I tell you this machine is nothing like I had ever seen before. When you talk, you can say things like, oh, this machine is fire. But this machine is actual
straight fire. Yeah.
Actual laser cutting fire. Actual fire. You press the button. Well, I can't even explain it. I'm going to let her explain it. But what I saw was she sat down, she pressed the button. In 3 seconds, there was a buttonhole. And then there was smoke coming out of the not only did it sew the buttonhole, it cut it with a freaking laser. So you have got to tell us about this company, Jack, or I think that's who you got it from.
It was a Jack.
I hadn't heard of them. So tell us about how you fell down the buttonhole machine rabbit hole and came up with a Jack.
Okay. So this was a long journey, but I'm gonna give you the Reader's Digest version of this journey. So my first machine was my aunt's late 80s Kenmore, and it was a great machine. And then it just gave up the ghost. It couldn't do it anymore. It was very slow. And I decided I wanted to keep sewing. So I purchased a really nice mechanical, is it Genome or Genome? I don't even know how to pronounce it.
I think it's Genome.
Is it Genome? Okay. A non-electronic, non-computerized Genome machine. It was called a Magnolia something. It was wonderful. Still have it. And I was sewing these garments, and then it came time to do the buttonholes for things, and it just could not do it. And a sewing machine, remember, buy all the machines, a sewing machine came across my plate via Facebook Marketplace, and it was a much more advanced Genome machine. It's actually a quilting machine. It's the, what's it called? A QCP 8000 something or other, right? It's 10 times the machine I originally had, and at an incredible price. And I could not resist it because I like machines. I also like a good sale. And I bought it specifically because I assumed this will certainly be able to do buttonholes that I require, right? Since this is an upper level consumer machine. Right. And boy, howdy, was I wrong. It just couldn't do it. And I thought it was me. And I changed all the variables. I tried the wonder tapes. I tried stabilizer. I tried everything. I trimmed my seams back further. I graded them. I did everything you were supposed to. And it just would botch 60% of all buttonholes. And
let me tell you what's so frustrating. And I know everybody, well, many people have been there. I can say I have been there many times. You do a sample buttonhole on your sample fabric.
And it's perfect.
And then you put your real fabric in there and the machine's like, ha ha ha, bitch.
Ha destroyed. And I was like, I want to make shirts. I can't make shirts. I was scared to sew one buttonhole. Sewing 6 or 7 was out of the question, right? And it was really frustrating. And I was on Instagram, because obviously, Instagram's got the best sewing community ever.
Agreed.
And someone in New York, and I wish I could remember who it was, had taken their jeans that they had sewn to the garment district and paid someone else to do a buttonhole. And I was like, whoa.
Yes.
Because that's not done on no home Janome nothing. That is some industrial situation. And I saw the machine in action, and it was just this giant honking metal beast. And I was like, well, I certainly can't have one of those in my house, but I really want to know if there's a consumer version of a buttonhole machine. I mean, there's sergers, there's blind hem. Why not, right?
That's right.
Turns out, no, there really is not someone could make a lot of money with this concept of a home sewer's buttonholer. Doesn't exist. And again, Instagram provides, partly because our phones are always listening to us. So it sort of started dumping these, other posts in my lap of a company called Jack. And I'd never heard of it. And they do industrial sewing machines. And it turns out they're, one of the larger industrial machine supplier, basically on the entire other side of the planet, right? So these gigantic garment factories that make most ready-to-wear clothes, a lot of them are using this company's machines, and it looked as if they wanted to sort of make a turn into consumer sewing. So they do have, lockstitch machines for really decent prices. I just, I would love to have one. I just can't justify it.
If you're listening, you can send us machines, and we will be
ever so grateful.
Projects and we're really awesome people, Jack. Jack, you really just got to get to know us well. And,
hashtag all the things,
Yeah, exactly. And Bekah really loves your machines. And
do you?
I would love them too if I had one. So, and I'll put my address at the end of the episode.
At the end. How to contact me. Well, they already know how to contact me because I had a prolonged back and forth with their representative when I found out they had not one but 2 different industrial buttonholers for sale to the public. And one of them was computerized and one was not. And after much back and forth and much hemming and hawing about it, because I can't lie, that was not a cheap machine. But like I said, I don't have kids. I don't travel. I kind of don't do much. I have a lot of free time, and all I want to do is sew. And the buttonholes were really ruining it for me.
A 12-hour shift is no joke. So
it's no joke.
On 3 days, off 4 days. You are putting in the work when you're there. So you get to work hard and play hard. And we're not going to let buttonholes get in the way of that.
Oh, and they were getting in the way. The buttonholes were breaking my heart and ruining my garments. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to do this thing. And I did that thing. And it took weeks to ship because it came straight from China. And it was unbelievable to put together because the computer components are just mind-blowing. It's just wires everywhere. But when I fired that thing up and it sewed a perfect keyhole buttonhole, my mind was blown. It's got it's sort of terrifying, right? It's this huge metal thing. It's got this incredibly sharp knife. You do not want your fingers near this thing. But it blows out buttonholes in any shape you want in a second. It's crazy. And it's just like my little, industrial sewing corner of my sewing room. And it makes me so happy. I've never regretted buying that thing.
I'm so glad to hear that because I can tell you're delighted with it. I can really tell you're delighted with it because, you were able to solve a sewing problem that you had, and to do it in a way where you don't have to ever worry about it again.
That's how it feels.
And so you might say you have some tencel or whatever, and it's really irritating and frustrating. You're like, oh my gosh, the last thing I want is to slide that slip and slidey fabric underneath this presser foot. But you don't have to worry about that. If you want to do a buttonhole and you pop it under there and off it goes. Poof. So I have seen it in action, and I feel like it would probably even be better demonstrated if they recorded a video in 50% time and slid it down, slowed it down to half speed.
It's shocking.
It's hard to even watch. Like, I'm like, I feel like I blink and I missed it.
It's gone.
So not only for mine, of course, it takes more time. So like I said, I love mine. I put the button in, I press the buttonhole's there, ta-da. But then I take it off. I always put freight check on the front and back of my zippers. Of my buttonholes. And then I let it dry. And then I use my buttonhole knife and I press down with the knife to cut it.
And hope you don't cut through it.
Definitely. Well, I have a little board that goes underneath it so I can press through it. But I'm always hoping that I'm like going straight down and I don't like lean in one direction or next. So I stab myself in the chest with the buttonhole knife. And
try explaining that to an ER nurse.
Exactly, right? Are you sure you don't have substance abuse problems? I do, but that's not why we're here, okay? We're not here to talk about, my issues. We're here to talk about this buttonhole that tried to kill me. It has nothing to do with when I drink or if I drink. This is not the situation we find ourselves in today, nurse. What we are doing is trying to, fix a big hole in my chest because buttonholes are stupid, and I wish I had got catfished into an industrial sewing machine like B. Havens has told us to.
I'm telling you, I mean, it was. There were definitely moments where I had regret because it was terrifying. I mean, there's this, like, it showed up. It weighed like 250 pounds. Like, it was unbelievable to put together.
It's like getting a new roommate. It's like getting a new roommate.
My husband looked at it and he was like, "You've got to be kidding me that this is what you bought." And because he's the one who had to put the whole thing together. I mean, he and I spent a couple days trying to figure this out. And it's got this giant manual that is just, it put IKEA manuals to shame. It was just like arrows and it was crazy. But we got it, and it threads like a regular mechanical machine. Which is, thank God, because threading is no fun. When threading is bad, it makes you want to cry. But it threads fairly easily. I always do a practice or two. I make my little dummy mock-up of like, well, this is the number of layers of the thing I'm about to make, and I'll just do a test one, and then I just go for it, and it's just like bing, 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 done, 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 and it feels so good. And the regret was brief, only because I was like, it really only does one thing. Is it worth it for one thing? But I just felt so happy with the machine that I had that I didn't want to upgrade my sewing machine again just to get buttonholes and potentially have it fail. I'm also one of those people that has like 20 single-use kitchen gadgets, so this is just kind of who I am.
He's like, my lemon zester, my lime zester.
Right. A yogurt machine, a mixer, a pasta this is just what I do. So now I do it for sewing.
That is incredible. So can you talk about some of the different types of buttonholes that you can do with that machine? You mentioned the keyhole was the first one. And so, what are some of the other ones? We know that, the machines have different types. You want a keyhole for a certain type of opening. Right. You want one that's more square. What kind of things have you been really excited about to find in the new machine?
What's cool about, and it was very overwhelming at first because it will literally do anything you tell it to, and you sort of have to have, you have to know what measurements you want, et cetera, et cetera. It can do the buttonhole you want down to, the density on each side. You can make all four different if you want. It will make a keyhole buttonhole. It'll make an eyelet. It'll do rectangles. It'll do ovals. It'll do rectangle on one end and oval on the other end. It'll do round. It'll do round on one end and keyhole on the other end. It will do any combination of any hole you want. I think the maximum size is maybe an inch, a whole inch. It was just shy, like a coat buttonhole barely is as big as it'll get, and it'll get as small as an eyelet, a round eyelet. So figuring out those dimensions was hard for me. Just interpreting the instruction manual was not easy for me, but it's got a lot of pictures, which helps. And it came with a few presets. So what I'd been doing was sort of tackling the presets and tweaking them to how I wanted. So then you can save them, just like a memory in a larger computerized machine, and name them. So I've got like Miss B. Havens jeans buttonhole, Miss B. Havens shirt buttonhole, because I'm a total dork like that. Like Miss B. Havens cuff buttonhole, slightly smaller than the shirt buttonhole. It's absurd. and they're all color coded. It's ridiculous. It's awesome.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
And like the way you approach the machine, I'm looking at one of the videos. It looks like you're sitting at it almost at a side angle, like rather than when we sit and face the front of the machine with our shoulders square, with the wheel on our right, and but yours is totally different. It's almost like you're almost perpendicular.
You're completely perpendicular, which surprised me for some reason. I'm not sure why, but because part of my research rabbit hole was like find every YouTube video of this machine. The only YouTube videos of this machine are from manufacturing companies in South Asia, and so I'm just watching multiple videos of this thing making piles of shirts. Like it's so wild, and you do sit at the front, right? So it's it feels it honestly feels like it's going to eat you because you're just approaching it head on. It's like you are not the master of this machine. This machine can just get you. That's what it feels like, looking into the mouth of a monster, but a kind, benevolent monster. And
make good buttonholes that don't make you cry or break your heart. So.
Exactly. And it honestly operates very much like a plain sewing machine. It's got a presser foot. It's got a foot pedal, and you just slip the thing in. It automatically closes it. You push the button, and then boop, it does it, and then it releases the fabric. Like the presser foot's automatic.
Wow. I mean, that's really incredible. I want to take a quick break, and when we come back, we can talk about some of the other machines that you might have or might be leaning toward thinking about getting, as well as some of your favorite upcoming projects, current projects.
Sure.
Talk about your jean sewing, and we have to tell everyone how you catfished me. So
Okay.
Hold on, everybody. We will be back. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be back in a bit. The Stitch Please podcast is really growing. I want to thank you for listening to the podcast and ask a favor. If you are listening to this podcast on a medium that allows you to rate it or review it, for example, Apple Podcasts or iTunes, please do so. If you're enjoying the podcast, if you could drop me a 5-star rating, if you have something to say about the podcast, and you wanted to include that, a couple sentences in the review box of Apple makes a really big difference in how the podcast is evaluated by Apple, how it becomes more visible. It really is a way to kind of lean into the algorithm that helps to rank podcasts. So if you had time to do that, to drop a little line in the review feature of the podcast, that would be really appreciated, and it would help us to grow even further and faster. Welcome back, everybody, to the Stitch Please podcast, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch. And I'm talking today with Bekah Haven, who is also known as the Tipsy Pincushion on Instagram. We've been talking about Buy All the Machines because she has an amazing industrial buttonhole machine. And one of the questions I was going to ask Bekah is, has this experience with the industrial sewing machine made you think seriously about getting other industrial sewing machines? I know some people really like or prefer industrial sewing machines because of the strength and power of the machine. I've seen some that come with like chutes, that they have chutes of I think maybe it's for their sergers or their overlockers that when rather than gathering it in a little basket like we have for our sergers, the fabric goes down into a chute. Wow. And there's a trash can that sits at your feet and it just goes down in there. The presser feet, all these things look different. I didn't know if when you were going down your buttonhole rabbit hole, did it make you think like, well, maybe I want to try to get another industrial machine, another,
So the machines that I do have, right? I've got my beloved Janome, like whatever, Quilter 8900 or whatever it's actually called. And I do love that machine very much. It's fast enough for me. It does what I need it to do, except for the buttonholes. And then the other machine I use for sewing is like a late 50s Singer 99. It's a three-quarter size machine. And it's wonderful for denim. So that's its primary usage. I don't try to like sew thick denim seams in layers on that quilting machine because I'm just terrified of destroying it. And so that's it for me for just sewing. I'm very tempted to sort of consolidate and only need the one machine. If I had like an industrial lockstitch machine, it would perform boboth duties. But I'm a bit of a sucker for a decorative stitch, and I don't use them often, but that quilting machine's full of them. And every once in a while, I love being like, ooh, a scalloped rainbow stitch on a pocket. Like I get to do that, and it sort of keeps me from wanting it doesn't keep me from wanting it, but it keeps me from requiring, in quotes, an embroidery machine or something that can do, more detailed embroidery work. I'm tempted by those things, but it's really so unnecessary for me at this stage of my sophomore sewing career that those two machines serve me well. And then I do have, you had mentioned Baby Lock before. I have a Baby Lock serger that is also my light, my love, my everything. And it does all the things I need a serger to do. I came across, again, fell into my lap, an old Husqvarna Viking cover stitch. You want to talk about a threading nightmare? Holy Toledo.
I'm looking at it. I see it, the Husky Lock 936. Yeah, it's a 4-thread. Is it challenging?
Oh, that machine, well, I'm used to the Baby Lock, right? So I'm very used to like your serger. You just approach it very gently, talk to it nice, and like hit a button, and it's just like, foop, and it sucks up the thread and you're done.
I do love that Baby Lock self-threading serger, y'all. I mean,
it's fun.
It's fun and it's not frustrating.
Nope. And that's what I want from sewing, right? Like, I don't want to be frustrated. This is my happy place. Yeah. Right. I don't want to get so frustrated that I walk away, which is what had happened originally with the buttonholes. I don't want to experience that again because it just makes it no fun. And as much as I wanted a cover stitch machine, I could not justify a self-threading one because those are terribly expensive, and I don't sew enough knits to really justify it.
Right, right. That makes sense.
Yeah, but this one, and I had bought a buttonholer. I mean, like, that sort of was, I shot my wad on the large purchase with the buttonholer. But this one came into my lap at a very reasonable price and a steal, really. I could not say no. And I've threaded it once because it took an hour and a half. It's extremely challenging, and of course, after I purchased it, when I went on the internet and looked, everyone said the same thing. They were like, this is crazy town to thread, and they were right. So everything's getting hot pink cover stitching because I don't want to ever change the thread again. So it's just everything is hot pink. That's it.
Oh my gosh. And
that's it for me in machines.
Well, that's not actually it for you in machines because look at her. See, y'all, Miss B. Havens is absolutely right because I know that you and I have a machine in common that's a bit of a rare gem.
Do we?
Yes, we both have a Simplicity bias tape.
Oh my God, you're right. That does count as a machine. I was thinking that is more of like an accoutrement, but you are right. That actually is a super special little machine that we have in common. And I am thrilled to own.
If you ever see one at an estate sale or somewhere at Goodwill or somewhere where a person is,
selling it and doesn't know what they have,
and they're like, I don't like bias tape. I don't want this thing.
Right.
Well, I think, if you ever see one of these, it's a little tiny thing. It's about the size of like a full-size tissue box. And what it does is that it takes strips of bias and you just roll it on, it feeds it in, it folds it, and it presses it.
It's amazing.
And it is so amazing. I bought mine maybe 7 years ago from Joann's, because Simplicity at the time was still selling them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kept seeing some of the notions for it at Tuesday Morning, which is a shop here in the U.S., y'all, that sells all types of like overstock goods that in all different. It's kind of like a hodgepodge, right?
Like an odd lot.
It's like an odd lots. It's a lot like an odd lots, and they divide it into sections. Like they don't have grocery like Big Lots has. It's more like they have luggage, they've got cooking things, they've got craft things, they've got bedding, they have just tchotchkes,
And they had the pieces to the bias machine.
Yeah, they had tips. I bought like 5 different tips. They had
that's
the thing that you can use to roll it on. And so the upshot of this, y'all, is that what it saves you from is using the manual bias tips where you move that metal pointy thing along and your iron kind of follows it. Some
and
people
burn your fingers off.
Bias. It helps your fingers. When I first got mine, I think I did something similar to you. I see that when you got yours, you instantly made a mountain of bias tapes. 12 yards of rainbow sky bias tape.
15 yards of that stuff.
Not only did I make 12 yards, I made 12 yards out of like 25 different fabrics. So I have like actual, if I have, I don't know, 75 yards of bias tape that I have made in my house right now. If I have 75, I got 200 because I went bananas. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
I went
open your own bias shop.
I'm telling you, and I just loved it. And so like you're using yours for Hong Kong finishes. So tell me about how you came across that bias tape machine, because those are scarce as hen's teeth.
I honestly do not know where that came from, because I got that as a present for my husband for Christmas. And it was the kind of thing. So when we do gift giving, we make each other, we've been married for quite some time. So like surprising each other is tough. So we make little lists of like 5 or 6 items and all, and exchange the list. And then like there's a minor surprise when you open your gift on Christmas. And that was on my list. I never in a million years thought he would find it. It was just, we each put on like one major item and like 6 smaller items. That was my major item. And cause I knew it would require a hunt. And damn it, he found that thing. That's the first Christmas surprise I've had in a long time.
That's like speaking your love language.
Yes. My love language is bias tape. Who knew?
Oh my God! Before we get into talking about I want to talk about like your Mardi Gras dress and your projects. So here's the thing with me and Miss Tipsy Pincushion. This is what happens when you follow people on the internet. You know how your parents.
This is going to be about the taping, isn't it?
This is not about the taping. This is about the catfishing. That's what this is about. Let's just say what it's really about. Mm-hmm. So I was following her on Instagram, and she had this beautiful picnic dress. It had this. It had a bias. It had a bodice that was gathered, and it had spaghetti straps. That were adjustable. And one of the reasons I liked it was because you didn't have to wear a bra because it was lined on the inside. It held everything in. And it was just really pretty. And I was like, gosh, that is a nice dress. Why don't you tell me more about it? So she proceeds to tell me that this is I think it was called a picnic dress.
Picnic dress.
From somebody. And I, me being apparently the copycat I am, was like, oh, well, I like dresses like that. And I love that silhouette and I love the bodice. And, I can make those spaghetti straps pretty easily because I've got this notion that I love that's great for making straps, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to get this pattern. So I get the pattern. I pay my actual U.S. money for it, and it arrives in my email, and I open it up, and I proceed to look. And I'm looking to the left and looking to the right, and I do not see an AO format. I don't see that. Yeah, exactly. And I'm looking, and I'm telling you, Bekah, I was so confused that I wrote to the pattern designer. And I was like, excuse me, miss, the AO format pattern seems to be missing from my order.
Oh,
And she was like, oh,
oh
I'm
no.
sorry, we don't have that. And I told her, as I tell anybody, I cannot tape patterns because it reduces my will to live. So I am not able to tape a pattern together. Like, I can't do it because it's like, it's a life-threatening condition. And so she was like, she explained to me that you really only had to tape the bodice piece together, and she gave me the dimensions, because apparently there's some people out there that are taping that skirt together, which is a giant rectangle.
Nobody should do that.
And I was like, wait, what now? And so so she was very kind and was like, no, you only need to worry about taping the bodice. And that was maybe 6 pieces of paper, and I could live with that. Not that I've forgiven you, but I could totally live with that.
But it's worth it. It's such a good bodice. I, like you, loathe taping PDFs together. I know people love the immediacy of it. I just, even with a giant cutting table that is, the appropriate ergonomic height and with the sharpest blade in the universe, I still don't want to do it. I don't like doing it. I don't like cutting them. I don't like taping them. They're never lining up properly because I get lazy. Then they're crooked. Like, it's not for me. And I think it was you had introduced me to pdfplotting.com, right? This is the incident that spurred me discovering that.
Yes. I'm glad you put that on record, because I gave you actually helpful information.
You did. You saved my life, Lisa.
I told you about I did. And in exchange, you catfished me.
I did.
In exchange for me giving you useful and helpful information to help make your sewing life better, you gave me information that made my life hard. So I don't know what kind of friendship this is supposed to be, but I like to
think of it now. Hold on now. I like to think of it as that I introduce you to a 6-page pattern for a bodice that is great in summertime, that does not require a brassiere. I like to look on the bright side of that exchange.
Well, that's fair. Because I have worn that dress because I do love it, and it is
a great dress. Pretty. That is it's called the picnic dress. It's by Lila and June. She has a couple of dress patterns, and I believe a skirt pattern as well. That I think it's a wrap skirt. And that, yes, they do not have AOs, so you just got to go for it. But it breaks my heart when I see people taping things together, and they tape 60 pages of it, and 40 of it is a square gathered skirt. Like, don't do that to yourself. That's just silly.
Yeah.
You know how to cut a rectangle. You know how.
Exactly. You deserve better in life.
Yeah. Nobody needs that.
Step into the light. And so you do a lot of fun costuming. So one of the great things about, I think, living in New Orleans is what I've been able to deduce from talking from folks like Patrice J. Bridle, who is from New Orleans and now lives in St. Louis, is that she says that there's so many special occasions growing up in this community. And so one of the things I thought was so remarkable was your Mardi Gras dress. I believe it was this gorgeous yellow dress that you worked on. And you said one of the keys to that dress was your overcast foot, which I thought was interesting, because since you have a serger and you have a cover stitch, you have these things, but you kind of resorted to the overcast foot. What made you choose that rather than, one of the other machines you have?
A couple different things. So that pattern had this insanely large flounce. It was this just double layer of, it probably was enough flat to wrap around the world twice. But when you gathered it, it was, across the front of the shoulders and around the back. And the edge of it needed to be either a rolled edge or somehow finished. And it was this sort of poly netting that I was using. And there is a rolled hem foot and setting on the baby lock serger that I adore. But this stuff, I didn't want to make it any shorter, and I didn't want to cut it.
Right.
And I didn't want to cut it unevenly. And also probably there was hot pink in the serger, and I probably did not want to fix that either. And I remember that this the Janome 8900 QCP quilting monster has a ton of feet, most of which I don't use. I use I use the regular presser foot and the zipper foot, and sometimes the stitch into the ditch foot. Very major favorite of mine. And I remembered it had an overcast foot.
Oh my gosh,
Oh,
that
I love
stitch in
that
the
foot.
ditch is incredible.
Oh, that is a true foot of the people. I mean, like, God bless people who want to like slip stitch their bodice linings to the waist. No, thank you. I will stitch in the ditch that stuff every time.
Every time.
Yeah.
And so the overcast foot came, it was like the real MVP, you said, because it allowed you to do something that you thought you wouldn't be able to do, you know?
Yeah. I thought I was going to have to leave it raw just because I was like, I'm just stuck with this length of this. I didn't want to shorten it, accidentally with the knife of the serger. And I mean, you can lock it, but then it'll get caught or it'll eat the net and it'll get bunchy. But this was perfect. That overcast foot was a real surprise. I'd never used it before, and it worked perfectly on the first go. It has a funny little inset with a funny little brush thing, and the thread just loops around in this perfect. It's very hard to describe, but like mechanically, the thread, like it makes the stitch, wraps around the end, comes up and just kind of keeps wrapping, but not as tightly as a rolled edge, if that makes sense.
Right.
But it holds it all together, so it never unraveled, and it looked really cute. I used a contrasting thread, and it looked adorable, and I think I'm going to use that foot a lot more often.
And the finished project, and again, y'all, I urge you to check out the Tipsy Pincussion's Instagram page, because she's got a really beautiful set of photographs of her in this dress, which is, I don't want to spoil it because I want you all to go check it out. But it's really a beautiful yellow dress.
Thank you.
And the shoulder setting is just really, really beautiful.
I love that dress.
It's a lot to love. I mean, it really is. It's a real piece, it really is. And you can tell that it's made with love, and you can tell that it's a celebratory piece for Mardi Gras. All of the things I think that you were hoping for with that dress definitely came to fruition. So I think that's really a big kudos. So we talked about some of the favorite projects that you worked on. Can you share like what you're working on right now and what you think you might be doing next?
Right now, I am doing two different things. I will pre-pandemic, I was doing one thing, and then I kind of got sidetracked for reasons I'm about to explain that are going to make a lot of sense. So I sew a lot of dresses. It's easy to get sucked into pretty dress patterns. They're fancy, they're beautiful. You just, you get this opportunity to make a dress fit you properly, which is always amazing. You don't necessarily get a lot of wear out of them, though. And because I don't have that many special occasions, right? So I wanted to really work on like a capsule wardrobe of everyday clothes that maybe would be less exciting, but that would get more wear. And that's where the orange slice comes in. The orange slice skirt was a piece of that capsule. And then the pandemic kind of happened, and we were all sort of, thrown for this bizarre emotional loop, and everything was turned upside down, and the world kind of went bananas. And I instantly was like, I must sew the fanciest, ridiculous dress I can. Because I need the fantasy. Yeah, totally bring on the fantasy time. So I am back in fantasy land. I'm actually working on, it's a Gertie charm pattern called the Liz dress. And it's just a total, 1950s bombshell movie star looking bodice.
Yes.
It's just cleavage and fun, beautiful shoulder straps that are very set, very wide. And it's got 6 billion pieces, and it's underlining and boning and all of the things. So that's what I'm actually working on now.
Oh my gosh. I cannot wait. Does it have any buttons?
It does not have any buttons, but you know what it has? It has a lapped zipper, which is something I've never been able to do properly. I always just end up chickening out and throwing in an invisible zip because that's just the zippers I know how to do. But this time I'm going to make the commitment and try to do it properly and get a nice vintage looking lapped zipper on this thing.
I do not think putting in a invisible zipper is somehow a cheat. Because I like the way I prefer the way invisible zippers look. I just prefer it. And so I'm like, I know it's like, well, I guess if I had these skills, I should do this lap zip, but I just don't like them. I just don't think
they look.
I like the way they look, but if you want to preserve a pattern, if you want a pattern repeat in a certain fabric and you want to preserve that look, and I guess because maybe I just love fussy cutting so much, I just, and it's also surprisingly easy to put in an invisible zipper. Like,
I find that they're easy too. I honestly I almost never put in regular zippers. I almost invariably put in invisible zippers. It was the first zipper I learned how to do. It was just when I started sewing, I had a book that had projects in stages. And when it got to the stage of and now we're going to make a dress and it's got a zipper and it's an invisible zipper. And I was like, okay, I didn't perceive them to be more difficult than anything else. I now perceive them to be easier, but the pattern is designed to have this lap zipper. So I'm just going to let go and let zip and try it.
You are going to do it, and you're going to do it well, just like you do everything else.
I thank you.
Or you're going to find a lap zipper machine. And then that's another thing that I can learn from you when you buy that lap zipper machine. That's going to come from thousands of miles away on
it's out there somewhere.
It's going to weigh 250 pounds, and your husband's going to be like, "What the heck?
What are you doing?"
With this, I'm telling Bekah, this has been so much fun.
This has been a blast.
So grateful that this was able to work out, y'all. We had so many ups and downs trying to get this conversation going. But as I said, I knew it was going to be totally worth it. Can you tell us, Bekah, where people can find you on the socials, on social media? Do you have other pages, or do you concentrate most of your sewing stuff with the Tipsy Pincushion?
I do. My entire sewing life and journey is solely on Instagram, because that community is just... it kept me going. It's just you shout out for help arrives. You see inspiration all the time. It's a 24-hour a day worldwide sewing bonanza, and I love it. So yeah, my Tipsy Cushion account at Instagram is where I do my whole sewing life.
Excellent. Well, I will include links to that in the show notes so people can follow you and follow your sewing journey. And I think I would like to make sure that you feel pretty fully promoted from sophomore sewist to junior sewist.
Oh, you think so? You think I'm ready?
Well, this is your program. I feel like you said you wanted to have it as a 4-year thing, and you said I feel like you could be pretty much senior. I think anyone who was rocking a buttonhole machine qualifies as senior, but if you don't feel that way, let's just go ahead and say junior. You are now third year junior in your curriculum, and we will check back in with you when you hit that senior year. I cannot wait to see what machines you own by that point.
All of them.
All right. Thanks so much. This has been a wonderful chat.
Thank you, Lisa. It's been great.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. So thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Stitch Please podcast, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. There are a variety of ways that you can support the program, and you're doing it right now. By listening to the podcast, it does help us grow. Another way to do that is to rate the podcast, review it, subscribe to it. All of these things are ways that you can support the podcast without having to spend any money at all. If you would like to spend some money to support us, there are ways to do that as well. You can make direct donations to our Patreon site for monthly contributions, as well as one-time contributions to PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo. And finally, we have another cute, very adorable way for you to support the Black Women Stitch Project. It's a pin, a PIN enamel lapel pin that's very cute. It's about 2 inches wide and 1.5 inch tall, and it's of the Black Women Stitch logo. And that is $15 with free shipping to the U.S. And so if you drop $15 in the PayPal, Venmo, or Cash App accounts, and then send me your if you send me your mailing address to my email, either at blackwomenstitch@gmail.com, or you send me a direct message on the Black Women Stitch Instagram page, we will put the pin in the mail to you. Again, free shipping, $15 for the pin, and all of this goes to support the Black Women Stitch Project. Thank you again for joining us this week. Come back next week and we will help you get your stitch together.